Thanks for watching this video presentation on North by Northwest. Please only watch this after viewing the movie. North by Northwest was the only movie Fred Hitchcock ever made for MGM, and it was also his second longest, only 7 minutes shorter than his 1969 CIA thriller, Topaz. Of his late American successes, it is one of only 2 true comedies, the last one being To Catch a Thief in 1955, and a high-concept comedy at that, spanning numerous U.S. states, stunt driving, pyrotechnics, and a chase across a U.S. national monument, while boasting an enormous international cast. As students and beneficiaries of Hitchcock's artistic legacy, we sort of have the privilege of looking at an artist's entire oeuvre, one's entire artistic output, as a single trajectory. A single anthology, a single menu. Looking at his life through the lens of historians and film researchers lets us discover curiosities and even similarities between movies that help us decode Hitchcock's elusive life. Of course, we can only conjecture, but as we've touched on before, it is exciting to see his films as this blueprint into his mind. Academics have, from time to time, commented or attempted to analyze the presence of gay characters as a feature in Hitchcock's movies.
I've heard nothing but innuendo.
Call it my woman's intuition, if you will. But I've never trusted neatness.
I think you're jealous. No, I mean it. I'm very touched. Very.
While I would not say it sheds any light on the master's own sexual orientation, it is accepted history that off the set he was on good terms with actors Cary Grant, Anthony Perkins, Ivor Novello, John Dahl, Farley Granger, and playwright Arthur Lawrence. It is reasonable to surmise that Hitchcock's homosexual characters in his films were a nod rather than ridicule. And to think Hitchcock's normalization of typically marginalized characters found success and little censorship in even his most commercially successful films, of which North by is the most identifiable, is itself stunning. Ernest Lehman's script is punchy, with its modern dialogue that makes it seem less theatrical. The acting style, thanks to Cary Grant's impeccable comic timing and the breezy pace, not to mention the Hollywood-sized, nonsensical plot, builds in intensity similarly to a lot of large-budget blockbusters today. Without a doubt, North by Northwest is one of Hitchcock's most commercially successful films. You can clearly tell how influential this movie is to other more recent spy thrillers. There are a lot of surprises and intentional misdirects in this movie, from which the James Bond and Mission Impossible franchises derive some of its tropes. The look of this film owes itself to the then jaw-dropping new film format known as VistaVision by Paramount, a film format and process that was also used on his previous visual feast, Vertigo. Films during this time were typically shot on 35mm film, and camera companies were in fierce competition to make the best possible image out of the available lenses and extant film stock. VistaVision used the same 35mm film stock as other films of its day, but shot on a camera that ran the film sideways across the camera gate. The result of this was an image, in contrast to anamorphic pictures, that was less grainy, higher in resolution, and less distorted. This is largely why North by Northwest still looks as beautiful today as it did upon release. I will link a video below that explains this film process in more detail. In this ambitious thriller, Hitch did try to stretch his own boundaries by embracing the idea of shooting in uncontrolled locations, only to be shut down by the Park Service of Mount Rushmore and at the United Nations. So naturally, he relied on his old tricks again, constructing these impossible locations on a soundstage with the lion's share of the film's budget. In fact, North by Northwest did have one shot that was actually filmed on location at the UN, but it was completely under the radar, shot without a permit, and it's the shot where Cary Grant walks up the stairs in the wide exterior. You can see a civilian do a double take here as the famous actor passes him at the top of the stairs. Only 2 films in cinema history have been able to shoot on location at the UN headquarters: the 1953 film noir The Glass Wall, and the political thriller with Nicole Kidman titled The Interpreter, released in 2005, 46 years after North by Northwest. North by is a farce, a grab bag of different themes and motifs Hitchcock felt were still underexplored in his work. In fact, the film's middle act and final scene, evoking the romanticized cosmopolitan air of The Lady Vanishes, takes place on a train, one of Hitch's favorite scenarios, a locale that he had not utilized as a primary dramatic arena since that 1938 film. North by Northwest is also the sexiest of Hitchcock's thrillers, if for no other reason other than his highly suggestive final shot of the train entering the tunnel, which was preceded with our hero and heroine finally sharing a bunk together. Ava Marie Saint, in her only collaboration with Hitch, who just a few years prior won the Best Supporting Actress Oscar for her first film, On the Waterfront, was the unusual but dramatically smart choice, as she was believable both as a love interest and an intelligent, covert spy.